When I was out there in the land of the mahogany, uh, I I had a lot of trouble drinking, and I really thought that I should do something about it. You know, went through the whole routine, cut down, uh, and finally, you know, I really have to stop drinking. And but it was odd. I never said that I must get rid of my character defects when I was out there drinking. It never crossed my mind. I never said I must become a useful person. It never crossed my mind. Drinking, stopping drinking, that was the only thing that I was really concerned with. And as a matter of fact, that was the only thing that was wrong with me. I drank too much sometimes. Got drunk every once in a while, but so what? A lot of people get drunk every once in a while. And aside from that, I was a pretty decent guy. If you asked me that, I'd tell you. Even if you didn't ask me, I'd tell you. I was a good father, good husband, good worker. I was okay, but come home late sometimes, out drinking, and I always used to get a kick out of sneaking into my own house. You know, I'm paying a mortgage and I'm sneaking in the house. Something wrong with that picture, but that's what I do. My wife would move furniture on me sometimes, you know. That was disastrous. When I came into AA, my shins were black and blue from smacking into chairs and drawers that she left open. I think she did it on purpose in the bedroom. She'd leave a drawer open and bang. But aside from that, you know, I was okay. I had a good business. I was a lawyer, and you know, most lawyers don't starve. And I had, if you lived next door to me, you probably said he's a fairly successful guy. But the drink was getting me. And when I came in here and I stopped drinking, I figured that was it. You know, that's really all this is about, is stopping drinking. I didn't realize it was only the ticket to get in here. And I thought that when I stopped drinking, that my household would turn into Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. I don't know if some people don't remember that show, but I thought I would buy myself a cardigan sweater, smoke a pipe. One of my children would play the guitar, and they would all dress for breakfast. And that's the way it would be. You know, I wasn't drinking anymore, so my life would be really terrific. And it didn't work out that way. It did not. I stopped drinking, and a lot of things cleared up. Don't misunderstand me. I stopped the lying. You know, that seemed to stop right away. I would come home, and you know, my wife had asked me, "Where were you? What'd you do?" And you know, I just give her some nonsense, and she said, "You're lying." I said, "Well, how do you know I'm lying?" "Because your lips are moving. That's how I know you're lying." And I stopped that. I didn't really have any reason to lie anymore. I wasn't drinking, so that was good. And but I looked around the room, and God, you people were talking about peace. You people were talking about serenity. I didn't know what that was. I had, you know, glimpses of it in the beginning. You know, your life seems to come together a little better when you stop drinking. And but I wanted more. I wanted what you people had. I could see it in your eyes. I could see it in your face. I wanted what you had. And you told me about the fourth step, and that I had to do the fourth step. I had to begin the spiritual surgery, because what I was suffering from was not a physical ailment, as we discussed last week. Incidentally, for those of you that are here every week, uh, I have a tendency to repeat myself. At my age, you do that. And so if I do, forgive me. But I when we first before we began this spiritual surgery, we had to find out what the wrongs were, what the problem was. And I took a look at the fourth step. The spiritual ills that were troubling me were the things that trouble anyone else, resentments, fear, sex problems, dishonesty. Those are all spiritual ills. Nobody, very few people come into AA, it seems to me, with physical problems, We come in with spiritual problems. With the exception of Genta, really nobody comes in with physical problems, And it's all, it's in our head. And this is how we go about finding out about what problems we have. Now, I think a lot of people are working on the fourth step. Did you ever hear that expression? Huh? When you go around the room? I am working on my fourth step. I don't know. My sponsor says that it takes 3 years and 45 minutes to complete the fourth step. You work on it for 3 years and you sit down and in 45 minutes it's done. So the advice that I got early on was to do it. Do it, do it, do it. And write it out. The book says that we are getting down to causes and conditions about our drinking. Causes and conditions. And one thing the fourth step is not is a life story. I think if they wanted to say, write a life story, they would have said, write a life story. I mean, these guys spoke English, and they didn't say that. They said to make a searching and fearless moral inventory. And that word moral, I knew what you people meant by that. You meant sex. I knew that. That's what you were after, my sex life. Which really would not be a bestseller, let me assure you. But it was just that. It was made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the book lays it out, It really lays it out. The first thing the book talks about is that self-centeredness. That's really our problem. We are so wrapped up in ourselves, as we discussed last week. We are so wrapped up in ourselves that everything revolves around us and our little lives, and we so desperately want to control things around us, and we can't do it. We just want to control our environment. We want to control the people that are in our household. We want to control the people at work. We want to control our boss. We want to control everybody that comes near us. And if we could just do that, things would be okay. And of course, we find out that we really can't do that. We have no control over those people. So the grudge list is the list that's made out in the first part of the fourth step, as discussed in the big book. And a grudge list, that's like Irish Alzheimer's. You forget everything but the grudges. And the grudge list has this first guy, Mr. Brown. And I think if there's anything that sets off what we're looking for in the fourth step, it's Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, if you recall, told this guy's wife about his girlfriend, is trying to steal his wife, and is trying to get his job at the office. 3 of the most marvelous reasons to hate somebody that I could think of. All right? But the grudge list says, what's the matter with us? What's our problem with this? Why are we resentful and angry at Mr. Brown? And of course it gives the reasons, those instincts that we have for security, sex relations, and society, and that this is our problem. Resentments will kill us. Angry people get drunk. We know that. We've seen that from experience. It's no secret in AA that when you hear somebody say, well, you should have been at work with me today. This woman next to me, she just wouldn't shut up, and she went on, and you just hear them ticking, you know, the time bomb. They're going to go off sooner or later. And as luck would have it, eventually angry people get drunk. So anger is really one of the real problems, or one of the character defects that we have. Does that mean I don't get angry? Of course not. I get angry, but it doesn't last the whole day. It doesn't tie me up. They say that the alcoholic gets cut off by a car on the way to work in the morning, and he's got to talk about it all day. The social drinker gets cut off by a car on going to work in the morning, and he bids them goodbye, you know. And that's the difference between us. We are extremes. Everything has to be extreme with us. The 12 and 12 talks about we either have to climb to the top of the pile or we have to hide under the pile. One or the other. We can't be in the middle of the pile. We have to be on top or hiding. And I find that for alcoholics, life is very loud. Everything is loud to the alcoholic. Nobody tries to give us advice. They criticize us, and they yell at us, and the only way we can live really is to drink, and that quiets the world down. It makes it livable, that this world is okay when I have a few drinks of me. You can't do that anymore because you know that'll kill you. So you have to get rid of these things that make this world feel so loud to you. The next list, there are really 4 lists that the fourth step talks about in the big book. The first list is the resentment list that Mr. Brown, who you're mad at, who you're angry at, what condition you're angry at. And the next list is the wrongs list, the faults, you know. No matter who did what to whom, where was our part in this problem? Where were we dishonest? Where were we wrong? Where were we self-centered? And the book tells us in no uncertain terms what this list consists of. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though the situation hadn't been entirely our fault, what had we contributed to it? Where were we to blame? The next list that they talk about is the fear list. And we all have fears. And if I told you that I was fearless, I'd be lying to you. We all have fears. Fears of uncertainty. But when the fears drive us around and the fears keep us from doing things that we should be doing, you all know about the guy who's afraid to speak at a meeting, you know, which is so helpful to him. I'm afraid to speak. I'm going to be in AA, but I won't speak. And don't call on me, and I'll be okay. You really have to get over that, you know. And we become not self-reliant, but God-reliant. God wants you in AA, and God wants you to talk. The fourth step kind of digs out all of these things, and then the last list that we come to is the sex list. And it says in the book that everybody has sex problems. That was a revelation to me. I thought I was the only one in the world with a sex problem. When I first came in, we had this little nun who used to come to our meetings. She was as pretty as a button, and used to come in her little habit, just a hat. And we read this part of the book, and everybody has sex problems. And the nun would shake her head. She had sex problems. How could that be? I said to myself. I mean, Sister Citronella had always taught me about sex. It was bad. I mean, how could she have sex problems? But we all have it, you know. And we all know that people go to extremes with it, huh? I mean, they really go to extremes with it. Yeah. Some want you on a bland diet, some want you on an all-pepper diet, as the book says. But really, what the judgment is, you know, are you hurting people with it? Are you being selfish with it? And then the book says that God alone will judge our sex problem or our sexual behavior. And that kind of leaves it up to us. It says that people say that if you set goals for yourself on the area of sex and you slip off it, you're going to get drunk. But the book tells us that in their experience that usually don't happen, you know, doesn't happen. So they treat it like any other problem. They treat it like resentments, they treat it like fear, they treat it like fault. They just treat it like any other problem. And it has to be handled that way. It's nothing, you know, it drives us around, that's for sure. And the men are always trying to figure out what the women are thinking, and the women are always trying to figure out what the men are thinking. Then this guy comes out with a book, men are from Venus and women are from Mars, or vice versa, you know. And we don't know what you want, you don't know what we want, or maybe you do know what we want, but it's a merry-go-round. But it's a problem that has to be treated and addressed like any other problem. So, you make your resentment list, your fears list, your fault list, and your sex list, and you've done the fourth step. And you've figured out your contribution to those areas of character defects. And then you go on to your fifth step. The 12 and 12 talks about the 7 deadly sins. I suppose you could use that if you want to. I never can remember them, so I wrote them down. Pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. Sounds pretty good to me. You can get rid of all those, you're in good shape. I think what really we're trying to be is to be comfortable. And the fourth step is that first step in the change to make us comfortable. I want to be comfortable with me, I want to be comfortable with you, and I want to be comfortable with God. And the fourth step is that step that shows me how to begin that, how to get the resentments and the anger and the fears. The thing that surprised me when I first came in here was, you know, if you have a resentment at someone, you should pray for them. Oh, that was very difficult. I was up in Canada one time, and there was a lawyer up there, and he told me a story of him putting this into practical use. He had a case involving a union up in Canada, and the head of the union actually committed perjury on the witness stand, and he lost the case, and he was furious with this guy, absolutely furious. And he went to his sponsor, and his sponsor said, well, you got to pray for him. He said, I can't do it. He says, you got to pray for him, he's driving you crazy. He hated him. He said he went into his bedroom, he closed the door, he locked the door, and he got down on his knees. And he prayed. He prayed that God bring this man health, wealth, and happiness. And he continued to pray that this man have health, wealth, and happiness. And he prayed, he said, for about an hour. He came out of there, and it was gone. It was just gone. The guy didn't run him around anymore. Because he really wanted this guy to be healthy, wanted this guy to have a good life, and he wanted this guy to be happy. And he prayed to God about it. It's a very strange way to run your life based upon the way we used to run our lives. I mean, normally if someone did that to me, I'd want to have them drawn and quartered in a very slow death so that it was painful and they would never forget it. But we can't run our lives that way. And so resentments are something that we have to take care of by praying for the person or the condition that has got us so angry. The fears are, it's funny. I was thinking about fears. I had great fear about doing what I'm doing right now when I started this thing. Mary Ann asked me about it. I said, Mary Ann, I can't do this. She said, yes, you can. You can do it. And so I feel comfortable about it now. I don't know how you folks feel about it, but I feel comfortable about it. But fear comes into our life. But I simply said, Mary Ann wants me to do it, and that's the same as having God wants you to do it. You know that. So you do it. That's all. And you rely on the fact that God is going to help you in talking about the steps as we go through them. But fears is something that we all have. And I think you have to work on them. You have to lessen them. I think a lot of people have fears about talking to people. We call it confrontation. I'm very bad at confrontation. That means you're scared to death to talk to somebody. All right, about something that they should be talked to about. Usually, I cannot confront that person. I'd rather hide and let it blow over, and nothing will happen. Well, you have to speak English in this life, and if it has to be said, it has to be said. And most times, it will be received as it should be received in the context in which it's said. If you try to be helpful with it, that's the way it's received. If you try to be very, very critical with it, that's the way it'll be received. But I don't think we should shy away from confrontation. I think we should talk to people, talk to our kids, I know people are afraid of their wives, afraid of their husbands, they don't want to talk to them, they're afraid to bring this up, afraid to bring that up. Those fears have got to be addressed, and one by one, they will drop. And one by one, you will feel more comfortable doing what you're supposed to be doing. I think God has given us a whole bunch of jobs in this life. And, you're either a wife or a husband or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or, you're a father, you're a son, you're a daughter. You have a job. And with that job, there comes responsibilities, whether it's for your mother. I have a mother that's in a nursing home. I have certain responsibilities to that woman. Sometimes I got to talk to the nurses on the floor where she is, You ever try to talk to nurses in a hospital? It's worse than a motor vehicle bureau. You come up to the counter and they walk away. And you say, excuse me? Yes, they really try to, but you can't be intimidated. You got an obligation. You have to make sure that your mother's taken care of. Or whatever, and you can't be put off with it. So these jobs that God gives us in life have certain responsibilities and obligations that we really have to take care of. Raising children, I think, one of the things that we do in raising children is a little tough love. but consistency in raising children. Be consistent. When I was drinking, I would tell them one thing and I'd get half in a bag and I'd forget it, or they'd do what they wanted. And they came in here and they talked about consistency and discipline. That's my responsibility. I have to tell somebody that they can't do that. And they're going to be angry with me, and I know that. But I wasn't put on this earth to be a father to say yes to everything that my kids wanted. That's not my job. My job is discipline. My job is love, but tough love. And so, to be afraid to do that is something that you have to face. And once you begin to face it, it goes away. I think with most any fears, this is the thing that God wants me to do. So I do it. And the fear of it goes away. The wrongs that we put on our fault list, basically for most of us, is lying. When we talk about honesty, we're not talking about cash register honesty. The guy gave me the wrong change, so I gave him back the. That's not the kind of honesty we're talking about here. We're talking about being honest with the people around us. That when I was drinking, my wife didn't have any right to know what was going on in my life. I mean, she was just butting in. But now it's a different story. We've got to be honest. We've got to, you have to tell people honestly what's going on. You can't lie to people. When you lie to somebody, you kind of diminish that person. You can't do that to people. That's not the way AA works. And so that's the kind of thing that we have to begin to change. The book says that our sex life, most of us need an overhauling in that department. You can't argue with that. As it says, all of us have got sex problems. And for some reason or other, I get young people coming to me in my group. Jack, I got this girl, and she's, what am I, some kind of an expert? I'm married 43 years. I always say 43 happy years, 41 for her, 2 for me. But, I'm not an expert in these areas. And I tell them, I said, if you ever find out how to handle this problem, come back and tell me about it. I want to put it in a book. I don't know why doesn't this girl like me? Hey, I don't know. But, listening, I think, is probably the best thing that we can do in that area. And telling them to do what's right. Explaining the word commitment to them often helps. Most guys don't understand that word, but explaining that to them often helps. So, and when you've got this list all finished and you're looking at it, and you're finally finding out about yourself, what's wrong with me? It wasn't just the drinking. It wasn't just the drinking. There are a lot of things that are wrong with me. And if I'm going to live a happy life and be comfortable in this life and be comfortable as the people I see around me, I've got to work on this 4th step list. I've got to do something about it. And of course, the 5th step is where we begin to do something about it. But I think the thing that comes back to me as I wrote that 4th step, finally, the thing that comes back to me is that this is alcoholism. This is the result of alcoholism. I don't think the social drinkers in this life, in this world, in our society, have a 4th step list that looks like mine. I don't think so. I don't think they go into rages, and I don't think they have the fears that I have. I used to be terrified to go over a bridge or in a tunnel. The bridge was going to fall apart in the middle of it, the Whitestone Bridge. You don't realize how shaky that is. The Whitestone Bridge, at any moment when I was on it, could fall apart and I could go into the Long Island Sound. I was terrified. My My palms would be sweating like I was having a heart attack going over the bridge. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was terror. That was terror. Because you would think that's safe? Wrong. You're wrong. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel had ships over it. And the ships could sink. And when they sink, the keel of the ship could come through the top of the tunnel, and it would be mud, a sea of mud all through it. That's what would happen. And I was terrified of going through. I don't think social drinkers think that way. I could be wrong, you know. I don't know a lot of social drinkers, but I don't think they think that way. But that's the way I thought. Until somebody discussed it with me and said, "What the hell, are you out of your mind, for crying out? You can't live your life that way, you know." Oh. He said, "You're probably one of these guys that think as you're driving a car along that the tire's going to snap off and you're going to go into a telephone pole." You got it, I said. You got it. That's it. You can't live that way. He's right. You can't, you know. But that's the way that was my life. And that's the way this fourth step reflected back to me. Terror, fear, resentment, anger, sex problems, dishonesty. That's what it was. It all reflected back. This guy on this fourth step list is a drunk. That was clear to me. It was a drunk. Only drunks have fourth steps lists like this. Normal people don't have it. Don't look at them like that. And so I had to do something about it. And I'm so glad I did, you know, because I was able to be a member here. I was able to be an active member in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, the book says this is the first, 12 and 12 says, this is the first tangible step that we make toward recovery. This is the first time we have something in our hand. The first 3 steps are in our mind. This is the first time we have something in our hand, a piece of paper, the first tangible step toward recovery. It's so important. And I don't really think you can do it in 45 minutes, but, you know, I think you got to take your time with it and dig and be honest and go through it and put it down on paper and do it with your sponsor. I think that's so very important. You got to get, if you're going to be comfortable with yourself and with others and with God, you've got to be fearless and searching in this moral inventory. And if you are, you have, as the big book says, taken a big chunk on the road to recovery. Now I have these questions that Marianne, God, gives me. One, write down everything that bothers you. That was my sponsor's advice. There's nothing wrong with that advice if what bothers you constitutes a resentment list. You know, if you're Mr. Brown and you know, this guy's trying to take your wife away and trying to take your job and tells your wife about your girlfriend, that bothers you, I suppose. Then that belongs on that list. But I think the fourth step is more than just the people and things that bother you. I think it has to do with the fears and the dishonesty and the sex problems. Should I also list my assets in my fourth step inventory? Thank God that nobody told me to do that, because I would have they would have far outweighed the liabilities, I'm afraid. The book doesn't talk about that. In inventory, I suppose, lists assets and liabilities, but I don't think that's what we're here for, you know. I'm also I also espouse not putting yourself on your 8-step list. I mean, you don't have to tell me to take care of Jack Keegan. You really don't have to remind me to do that. I will take care of me so well. It's instinctual. You don't have to worry about that. I'll be okay. You know, it's not something you have to be concerned about. I will take care of me. That's my problem. I was really too concerned with me. I was told that for growth and change, I had to do the fourth step. I don't really see how you can change. I mean, change in the psychic sense in this program until you do the fourth step. I mean, you can change your habits. You know, you won't be drunk every night. That's a plus. You won't drive a car into a telephone pole. That's a plus. But if you want to grow and to change in this program, and that's really what we're here for. You know, we're lucky enough we had the ticket to get in. We had the booze. We had the ticket to get in. And now we can experience this growth and change. I once was asked to do a meeting at a group called Oanon. Probably some of you people never heard of Oanon. It is the Al-Anon component of Overeaters Anonymous, and they call it Oanon. And I've spoken at Al-Anon meetings, and I must say that the people in the Al-Anon meetings are very receptive to the steps and our program and our way of life and etc. Not Oanon. Not Oanon. I must have spoken, I don't know, for a half hour or something. Went around the room. He says, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. You know, I got an overweight wife. That's all. What else is new? I have no problems. They have no problems. They don't have a fourth step that looks like mine. You know, they're not being driven nuts. And it was like, you know, I never spoke on another one. I don't know if the program still exists, but unless you need this program, unless you need the growth, and unless you need the change, you're not going to do it. Because that hurts. Spiritual surgery hurts. You know, you got to change your life. You got to change the way you react to life. You got to change your personality. The book talks about the spiritual experience as being a personality change sufficient to recover from alcoholism. It hurts. So if you don't need a change, you know, the only thing the matter with you is you drink too much sometimes. Well, you come in here to stop drinking, that's okay. But we need to change. If you had a fourth step like I had a fourth step, you got to change that. You can't go on living that way. You'll drive yourself crazy. So if you need to change, and this is the program, that we really need this program. It's not just stopping the drinking. We need the whole ball of wax. We need the toy inside the box, not just the box. We need it all. So you have to grow and to change. They told me when I first came in here, I don't know when I started drinking. I remember, you know, I drank really as soon as I found out about it because it was all around my house. But I really started hitting it when I was about 16 or 17. And they come in and told me that emotionally I was 16 or 17 years old. I was furious with that. I was 39 years old, married, 4 children, lawyer. Don't tell me I have the emotional stability of a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. But the more I was around and I did things like the fourth step, they were right. They were right. I had to grow up. I had to grow up. This growth was here. I had to face life on its terms. There are people in this life, as the book says, that do terribly wrong things to me. Welcome to the club. This is life. You know, you can't have them live in your head and run your life. Can't work it. It doesn't work that way. That peace and serenity that we spoke about, that once you get that, though, you don't want to let that go, do you? Huh? That the only time I stopped drinking, well, in July it'd be 26 years. So when I say $5, I mean $5 was perhaps a little more. It could buy a little more then than it does now. But my peace and serenity was $5 on a mahogany, and I order a nice Rob Roy, and that's it. Oh, and that was it. I could smell the lemon rind. It was just terrific. That was my peace and serenity. But of course, it quickly disappeared. But I come in here and I get real peace and serenity. And when something happens to that, I want to get it back. I want to get it back. That's what this life is about, being comfortable. comfortable with me, comfortable with you, and comfortable with God. So I have to change. Am I starting the process of clearing away the debris of the past with the fourth step? I think you have to, because those resentments are really from the past. Those resentments that you have against those people that did you wrong are from the past, and you've got to clear away the past. When I was drinking, blackouts were, just, it was a given that I was going to have a blackout. I would walk along the streets of White Plains. I've been a practicing lawyer in White Plains since 1958. And I would walk along the streets of White Plains with my head down like I was looking for nickels. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to look at anybody in the eye, because they would look at me and they'd smile. And I wouldn't know where I knew him from. Where'd I know him? Where'd I know him from? Her from? What? What'd I do? What'd I say? What? So the quickest way to do that is you don't look at anybody. You just walk along, looking down. I'm in the program, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and I'm waiting online at a restaurant. They used to have a restaurant at the corner of North Broadway and Main Street. And I had the family there one night, and it was a place that didn't serve liquor, It was a funny place to eat. I mean, I never realized that people ate in diners, I don't know how they made a living, but I found out that they do very well. But anyway, I'm waiting in line. There's a big crowd, and I'm looking at everybody right in the eye. Wow, what a change. I'm looking at everybody in the eye. I don't care who's looking back at me. I don't have anything to hide. I've been sober, I don't know, 6, 8 months, a year, something like that. What a difference. What a change. The past, I'm clearing that away. I'm getting rid of it. It was, it may not seem like much to you, but I tell you, it was one of the bright spots in my sobriety, that I could look people in the eye. Strangers, I could go along the street and see somebody I never knew. Good morning, how are you? Let him worry. Maybe he's a drinker. He's going to worry about where I know him from, right? But it was a big, big change for me. I was the guy who wanted to be under the pile. I wanted to be under the heap. Do I have to do this step with my sponsor? You don't have to do it, but you're crazy if you don't, It's like the story that Jack Brennan used to tell about the guy who jumped out of an airplane in World War I, and he was flying kind of low, about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, and he jumped out. He had no parachute, and he landed in a haystack, and he was fine. But it would have been much better if he had a parachute. So yes, it would have been much better if you do the fourth step with your sponsor, because your sponsor has been through it. There are some people I hear sometimes, I don't have a sponsor. Who the hell are you not to have a sponsor? Bill Wilson had a sponsor. Dr. Bob had a sponsor. Who the hell are you not to have a sponsor? Come on, you got to have a sponsor. You got to have somebody tell you, just a minute, this is wrong. You have to have somebody do that. You have to have somebody you can confide in. You have to have somebody you can laugh with. And, sponsors become very, very close to us. And my sponsor, as long as I call him, he's kind of cheap. He doesn't call me. But as long as I call him, I'm okay. I talked to him yesterday. Bill W. in the book says, as Bill sees it, says, no true alkie ever stops drinking permanently without undergoing a profound personality change. As we AA people know, permanently, as quoted above, means just for today, this 24 hours. Remember, we did it, so you do it too. That's the essence of the spiritual experience that these steps are supposed to bring about. A personality change that is sufficient to recover from alcoholism. I don't know how you were, but when I came in here, AA was just going to be another one of the failures that I would add to my ever-growing list of failures. I failed really at virtually everything that I started out with. I wanted to play in a Legion band. I couldn't play the bugle, and I would have been a second-class scout until I was 80. It was just I was not an achiever, as some people are. Some people are overachievers. I was not an achiever. I was far from that. So I just thought that AA was not going to work. I had tried to stop drinking many, many times. One time I did it for 6 months. One time I did it for 8 months. But it wasn't that I couldn't stop. I could always stop. But stop didn't mean stop. Stop meant rest. Stop meant pause. Stop didn't mean stop. So this wasn't going to work. And why wasn't it going to work? Because the shot glass was still in my head. All the time, that shot glass was in my head. And it had to be filled at some point in time. And only when I got the shot glass out of my head did I feel any real permanent sobriety. I had a guy ask me, do you envy people who drink? I was in here, I don't know, a few months. And I said, yes, I do. I envy people who drink, who can drink. I envy people that, it's so odd to say this now, but this is the way my head was at that time. That shot glass was still in there. I envy people who can sit at a bar and have lunch. I envy that. And he said to me, he said, you haven't taken the first step. I thought that was interesting. I thought I'd taken it. But I had not. And of course, Bill and Bob had the idea, you have to undergo a personality change. You can't just stop drinking. If you want to get over drinking, you have to undergo a personality change. A personality change that's sufficient to overcome alcoholism. And that's the spiritual experience. And that takes the time. And that's what these steps are about. That's what the fourth step begins to do. And a day at a time saved my life. I can't put it any other way than that. If you would have talked to me about permanent sobriety when I first came in here, I would have been drunk the next night. Day at a time saved my life. All you have to do is do it for today. And I think I told you the story with my sponsor that when I first came in, I told him I go on vacation in March and I want to drink in March. This was in July. And he said, Jack, you only have to worry about today. Just today. God, he kept talking to me about that. Just today, Jack. Just today. That's all. Get on your knees and thank God just for today. Don't worry about tomorrow. You could be dead tomorrow. What a strange thing to say, you know. But I could be dead tomorrow, you know. I could wake up dead. And, you know, that could happen. So don't worry about it. You just take care of today. And there isn't anything that you can't do for one day, you know. Sometimes people break it down into 10 minutes. I'm not going to drink for the next 10 minutes. Okay, I'm not going to drink for the next hour. But it's just the now, today. If God wants you to stop drinking more than 24 hours at a time, he would have made the day longer. But he didn't. He only made it 24 hours. And that's why you have to do it. Some nights I got to bed early, you know. Boom, pull those covers up. Day's over. You know, woohoo. Tough day, day's over. And but yeah, that's you know, that's the personality change that we're talking about here, the spiritual experience. You know, it's funny, when I first came into the program, you know, you get curious and inquisitive, and I'll never forget, I looked up in the World Book Encyclopedia, I looked up alcoholism, and they define it, you know, and I thought it'd be interesting to find out what the World Book says about it. But one of the things it says about it, and I will never forget it, is that it can only be cured by a psychic change. The World Book says that. What the hell do they know about alcoholism? Huh? A change in personality, a change in your head. The shot glass gone. Look at the world differently. React to life differently. You know, this lexicon that we have in here, character defects, you know. I guarantee you there isn't one person in this room, and one out there drinking, ever really knew what a character defect was. I certainly didn't. I knew the word character, didn't really understand that. I knew the word defect, but I didn't know what you meant by character defect. There was something wrong with my reaction to life, and that had to be changed. I didn't know that. I didn't even know how to begin that. I mean, if somebody sat you down and said, listen, I want you to prepare a program to keep people from drinking, would you ever put a fourth step in? No, not on your life. Not on your life. Why would you want to change somebody's personality? But you can't stop drinking unless your personality changes. You can't. And this step, this fourth step, is where we begin this personality change. And next week we're going to talk about admitting that to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. That's usually pretty frightening, and we'll talk about that next week. Thank you.